From alien abductions and mass sighting by kids at recess, today we're jumping right into three UFO stories for your entertainment. So, kicking us off with a story I've heard before is the story of Betty and Barney Hill, a married couple who had been married for about 16 months, but hadn't went on their honeymoon yet. So the couple on a whim decided to take a break from their busy life and take a 3-day vacation to Montreal and to Niagara Falls. But little did they know what would happen in just a few nights. As they headed home to New Hampshire from their vacation, the Hills stopped at a diner in Vermont around 10 p.m., hoping to make it home by 2 a.m. As their drive continued, there were bright lights in the sky following them. About every mile or so, they got bigger and brighter. Now, Barney, being a World War II vet and a bit of a plane nut, wasn't too worried and figured that since it was late, it probably wasn't a plane, but just a satellite that went off course. Now, I ain't a plane enthusiast or a spaceman, but I'm really struggling to see how a satellite being off course makes sense. Let's say that's the case. The lights getting bigger and brighter would mean that it's falling from space, which is probably a good reason to freak out to me. But I'm just a guy on the YouTube, so what do I know? The couple continued, but eventually they got curious about the lights following them and pulled over. Betty grabbed a pair of binoculars and realized that it was an object spinning in the air and believed it was a flying saucer. Here's a picture drawn by Betty of what she seen that night. And since nobody asked, here's what I drew. I just got an Apple Pencil today and been having a lot of fun trying to figure out how to use the dang thing. But back to the show. Now, Barney was skeptical of any aliens, but had no explanation to what it was. They got in the car and continued on, but by the time they reached Route 3 in Lincoln, the thing in the sky was hovering just about 100 foot above their car. Barney stopped and got out of the car with a handgun. I guess back then you could travel to Canada with a pistol. As Barney looked at the thing in the sky, it was as big as a jet, but as flat as a pancake, and behind the windows were beings in gray uniforms. Barney quickly ran back to the car and sped off, but as he and Betty continued, they began hearing beeping from the back of the car. Their eyes felt heavy, and they began to fall asleep. The next morning, the couple woke up in their home in Portsmouth, with no idea how they got there or what happened the night before. Barney's shoes were scuffed and Betty's dress was torn, and strangely, both their watches had stopped. Betty began going to the library trying to learn all she could about UFOs and even contacted the Air Force. But over the next couple years, the couple began suffering from disturbing dreams and anxiety. They began seeing a psychiatrist named Benjamin, who began helping the couple piece together what they seen that night. After months of counseling and a bit of hypnosis, the couple began to remember their encounter. According to the Hills, a UFO had landed on their car and led them up a long ramp. Once inside, they were separated and stripped. And a bit of a out of video thing, I just found a trick to make the white outlines on these characters pop a little easier. I'm not going around and fixing all the ones I've already drew, but it's going to help speed things along. They were then asked to get on a metal table where the aliens began taking samples of hair, nail, skin, and even began probing them with needles in the arms and legs. They even noticed one of them seemed to be the leader and was bossing everybody else around. Betty then asked the leader where they were from, and she was shown a map. Betty recreated this map, and many years later, Marjorie Fish concluded that the map had been from the Zeta star system, wherever that's at. This is definitely not the first abduction story, but it is one of the most well documented and changed the ideas of aliens being friendly creatures just passing on through to being obsessed with medical examinations. I'm not sure how I feel about this one. There are a few things that are a bit odd and a bit out of place for me, and I ain't convinced with the whole hypnosis thing, to be honest. And it seems a bit odd that Betty was pushing this a lot farther than Barney was. You would think they'd be on the same page. But what do you think? Moving to April 6, 1966, at Westall School in Australia, when screams began ringing from outside. He started like any other for these kids until Tanya, who was 13 at the time, went outside and she noticed a disc zigzagging through the air. Terrified, she ran back into the school, screaming there's a flying saucer. as kids and teachers poured out of the building to see what was going on. The UFO flew over Westall High and Primary School and is the largest mass sighting in Australian history, with some reports ranging from 1 to 3 UFOs. Ken Stallward, a former student and now retired principal, believes that the object was a secret military project, but by definition was a UFO. It was unidentified, it was flying, and it's clearly an object. Thanks, bud. That's the most insightful thing I've ever heard, and the most principled response ever. Now, Richard Sanders of Australian Skeptics Inc. I'm skeptical if that's even a real thing. And who would have guessed Mr. Sanders is pretty skeptical of the whole event, saying, it's just trying to find the most reasonable explanation without jumping to fantasy, or the very unlikely event of aliens in a spaceship. End quote. There are other skeptics that claim mass hysteria. Sounds like a lot of people are trying to do some quality PR trying to make all the people who've seen this sound crazy. The crazy thing is the amount of people who've seen this, from students to teachers, even though the majority of them remained quiet throughout their life because they were scared of repercussions from their professional lives. But now they're all retiring and begin to speaking out. Tanya, who went on to become a marketing and business manager, said, what frustrates me, and I think all the other pupils, is the attempt to have it buried. If it was really nothing significant, well, let's explain it. I think that's all anybody wants to know. Please tell us what it is. End quote. And I agree, there seems like an odd amount of people just trying to sweep the whole thing under the rug. Not to mention, some witnesses claim to have seen men in uniforms arriving at the spot and believe the UFO descended, but nobody has any records. Skeptics have claimed it might have been a weather balloon or a new type of plane under development. This happened 60 years ago at the time of making the video, and I can understand people not believing that it happened, but it's kind of fishy that so many people are on the hunt to make all the people that seen it sound crazy. The next story is the Phoenix Light Show. It's the second largest mass sighting in the U.S., and on March 13th, 1997, a V shaped formation of lights were seen in the night, with one witness claiming it stretched a mile wide and was seen in both southwest Nevada and large parts of Arizona, but didn't appear on any radar scans. A few hours later, they appeared again over the Sierra Estrella Mountain, but by this time, they were in a string of lights instead of the V formation. A Rocky Mountain poll actually did a survey and found that 10% of residents had seen the lights. There was no official investigation, which understandably was suspicious to those that had seen the lights with their own eyes. The governor Fife Symington, which Fife is an awesome name and reminds me of Fievel from Fievel Goes West, if anybody remembers that. Now, after months of being badgered, Governor Fife finally did a press conference, and he actually had one of his staff members dress up like an alien, which is pretty funny, but the press wasn't too happy about it. One government official, Councilwoman Vice Mayor Emma Harwood, did call for an investigation, but was faced with so much scrutiny she ended up losing her government position. Now, here's a kicker. 10 years later, Fife actually did come out and say that he had seen the lights himself. And being a pilot and former Air Force officer, he said he can definitely say it did not resemble any man made object. And why did it take him 10 years, you may be asking? Well, buckle up. Fife stated he waited 10 years due to political upheaval. The dude was under indictment for 21 counts of extortion, bank fraud, and creating false financial statements. Raise your hand if you're as shocked as I am to hear about a corrupt politician. As far as it sounds now, this was a military exercise by the Air Force, specifically the A-10 Thunderbolt. A hobbyist also reported that he had seen the lights through a telescope and they were jets. Whether this was a military exercise or something more unknown, many people still believe that the jet story is a cover up, but who's to say? Let me know what you think of these three stories and which one was your favorite. And do you believe these were UFOs or something else? If you like the video, like and subscribe. I'm having a lot of fun drawing for these videos, even though I'm still learning how to do it. I have some ideas for some more alien stories and some on ancient towns that I think could be pretty fun. Let me know if there's anything I should look into. But till next time, Mansplainer TV, signing off.